Hey YouTube, I'm in between recording setups again. I'm trying some things out and they're not working, so apologies for straight up video quality. Uh, but yeah, I needed to get this out while the getting's good, because there are already a few Stormbreaker videos out there, and I needed to I don't know, throw my 2 cents in. So it's important when I'm showing you guys this and talking about him to describe exactly what he is and what he was meant to be, which might sound weird, but it's worth saying he's made out of foam so that he's soft and squishy and safe for Denver Comic Con because of their prop policies, which are which are pretty strict. Yeah, and more specifically, what he is has to do with the fact that there's not really good reference for Stormbreaker out right now. We've got, unless somebody has a really, really pristine pirated copy of the film, all we really have to work off of are like the Hot Toys figure of Thor they have out, and this guy, which is, yeah, sorry, I don't, yep, he's in frame. Cool, professional. So what this hammer is precise, detailed measurements taken from this scaled up double size. It was actually like a really easy conversion, and that resulted in a hammer slash axe that's like 18 inches long, which for someone my height, which is maybe an inch shy of Chris Hemsworth on a bad day, it seems to scale. It seems like it fits from what the hammer looked like in the movie. Um, Now, this is not 100% accurate. When I say this is some of the best reference we have, this is still not great. I think it's good for size and shape and proportion, but there are a couple, like the runes on it are nonsense. Like, Mjolnir has an inscription on the top of it that makes sense in their not really accurate one-to-one letter code thing they used. This uses the same thing, but it doesn't say anything. So I'll throw you guys some pictures of that if you want to use any part of this for reference. Which I should, get to the point of those detailed measurements I took. I've posted pictures of those on the Replica Props forum on 4 squares to an inch graph paper. So if you get that graph paper, you can just follow square by square my measurements and end up with something basically like what I have here. I'll go through like a little bit more of a specific walkthrough at the end of the video if you want like any more specific advice on that pattern and how I built this guy with that. I don't really have a good setup for. Actually no. Let me cycle back for a quick sec, because the one other thing I want to point out that's actually inaccurate on this is this bit here. In the actual prop, this channel extends through the face of the hammer here instead of stopping right there, so it can be all safe and squishy and foamy. Now my hammer shares that inaccuracy, but since he is essentially a giant toy, a giant squeak toy, I was fine with it. I always knew this was not going to be 100% accurate, so I just kind of chalked that up to just having something to walk around Denver Comic Con with. Cycling back to what I was saying, it's gone now. Yeah. So this guy is made entirely out of craft foam, except for the handle, which was made out of insulation for like copper pipes, which let me, bend it flexibly around the handle in that kind of root sort of thing Groot has going on. Yeah. So let's get more into the nitty gritty of talking about exactly how I made this guy, and hopefully you can use some of that as a guide if you're wanting to make your own. So here's that pattern I described on that 4 squares to an inch graph paper. There is a much higher quality image of this on the Replica Props forum. Link is in the description of the video. And certainly use that for anything you see fit. This is just the toy blown up double scale, so it's about 18 inches long. Now, how I built this more specifically is And again, I'll try to keep it pretty vague, because if not, I tend to ramble, and that's not going to be inherently useful. This entire section here was a 1.25 inch thick chunk of styrofoam. Again, keeping him light. And I just happen to have that from a bookshelf I bought at some point, so I have no real great recommendations on where to buy that. Now, as for making the axe blade, I then took the other chunk of that, and I just cut a strip of foam in this shape and laid it along the flat of that chunk of foam there. So it was, demonstrate here. Here we go. It was sticking out of it, much like that, leaving a right angle to have the axe blade come off of. Then I took this right angle, essentially, and laid that on a strip of foam, like about so, and then traced it out and, cut the foam accordingly. So that's why I don't have a pattern for like the side of the axe blade. You can kind of see a cross section there. Was because I kind of had to freehand that. There are several things here that I just sort of freehanded, and I'll call those out. This isn't a perfect guide on everything to do, but hopefully this will give you a good guideline about where to start. Now, this detailed section here was 4 layers of craft foam just smack dab on the side of the axe face. And I'll go ahead and bring the boy back onto the table here to kind of show you that. Flip him over to the other side so you can see him a little bit better. But yeah, the first layer was everything, including these exterior wings. The second layer was everything but that. The third layer had this section cut out of it, and then those details carved into it. And then the fourth section was just these side pieces, which left that really nice 3-dimensional detail there. It left that, which is a little bit ugly and a little bit awkward on the edge. But again, he's soft and he's foam and he's safe, so hopefully he'll get through the door without me having any trouble there. The next portion of this, if I can find that other piece, here we go. That next portion is this guy. This is the side silhouette of that weird center section as it transitions from axe to hammerhead. This does look like it sticks out really far when you're working the prop, but it does actually kind of just stick out just far enough for the hammer to hook onto it in a way that makes sense. So again, that'll be posted for more precise measurements there. Then comes the, I guess you'd call it the throat of the hammer, where to get a square cross section here and here, so you can just build the diagonals right across that, was this piece, which is only about like 3.5 inches wide. It's got about a 1/2 inch notch cut out of the corner. And with that 1.25 inch thick, and taking into account the extra craft foam on the sides of that, that gave a square cross section of the hammerhead here, and then this was the square cross section of the hammerhead at the end. So then it was just a matter of building the diagonals between the two, which I aired a little bit on the side of caution and made these about 6 inches long, because it is a diagonal. It is a little bit longer than just going straight across. And this is the silhouette of that piece. Again, it was just a matter of taking this measurement, and doing 6 inches between the two. So backing up a step, that inaccuracy I mentioned on the toy, where on the toy, this groove ends about here, where on the actual prop, it continues through the face of the hammer. So that's, if you're wanting to make it accurate, you want to continue it through the face. Now, to describe the groove through the hammerhead, which really makes the thing look so much better. Before I had that, it was like, the hammerhead on this looks so bulky and stupid, but that really makes the shape more graceful. I cut a strip of foam 2 inches, if I remember right, maybe 1.5 inches thick, and folded that in kind of a diamond pattern. If you're using foam, you will have to reinforce these edges, because if not, that piece of foam is going to like bow out and not keep a straight edge there. So yeah, that groove actually went yeah, no, that's actually not. See, this is what I'm talking about with rambling and not being useful, strictly speaking. This area on the hammer is like one of the most complicated and weird, and it's usually mostly covered up by the vines. So, make of that what you will. So after cutting the groove in this and nestling, setting that against that section here, and gluing this overlay over the top of it, in between those I nestled this piece, which resulted in this little diamond thing here, which actually I have, drawn on the actual pattern, inaccurate to scale, so I'll fix that before I post this. But yeah, this resulted in that weird little interior section. I'll bring the bad boy back up again. So this piece nestled under this upper section and in the channel. There's not really anything behind it there, but again, this prop is a little bit slapdash, let's be honest. So yeah, that's how I did that. That's how I did one of the most complicated parts of the hammer in some dumb, stupid, oversimplified way. And as for the head of the hammer, that is arguably simpler, but not really. Because it seems like anytime I measure diagonals like that, I get something wrong. So I made those about 3 1/8 inch wide at the base, or sorry, 4 1/8 wide at the base and 3 1/8 wide at the top. That was mostly for the sake of the thickness of the craft foam, which is something I had to take into account at this portion of things. Where are the other pieces I've got? And again, mostly these will be, pretty simple when you actually just see them laid out. So this was essentially the side cardinal direction faces of the head of the hammer. And I had the piece for the diagonal here. Anyway, not terribly important. You'll be able to find that when I post it. And that's the face of the hammer, which has a round detail on the front of it that I left pretty plain. On the toy, it's got a pattern carved into it. That seems inaccurate. And yeah, I have not adequate reference to say what the actual hammer has on the face of it. So it occurred to me as I was editing this video that I did not describe anything about the paint job for the hammer. And I should probably do that. Most of you probably have a good idea about what you want to do on that. But for the record, if you have had trouble painting craft foam before, which I certainly have, it tends to look kind of spongy and gross and not great. The way I got the metallic finish on this guy was 2 layers of glossy black fabric paint. You could do 3, but definitely more than 1. And if you haven't tried painting anything with fabric paint, what I recommend doing is you just kind of squeeze on a little strip of it and then brush it out. You will need less than you think, and any excess will leave kind of a raised texture, so be a little careful with that. Also, if you're working with foam, try to keep the tip from dragging on the craft foam itself. You'll mark the foam, and if that's not what you're going for, then you want to avoid that. And yeah, beyond that, it was just a pretty simple paint job. A layer of regular metallic silver, sponging on more of a dark gunmetal color, and then sponging on a little bit of bright silver to kind of bring out the details, which gives it that sort of lived-in, weathered look, even though it was freshly forged in the movies. But yeah, no, that gives it a little bit more authenticity. I also used brown fabric paint on the handle, on that insulation tubing, that foam insulation that wraps around pipes. Acrylic paint wasn't sticking to it worth anything, so a couple layers of brown fabric paint. That'll take longer to dry than you think, and it'll still leave kind of a squishy thing, which most people will probably not use that for the handle, but I needed a soft foam handle for Denver Comic Con, so that's what I had to go for. Yeah, that's kind of the long and short of, pretty sure that covered everything, but if you guys have any questions, shout them out in the comments below. I'll answer everything I can. If you're interested in this project, I have several other videos about Thor cosplay on my channel, and plan on doing some more. The next thing I have planned is I'm building a new set of the scale arms for Thor, which are one of the trickier parts of his costume. Yeah, but I have some new stuff I want to try on that, and the video I've done previously was not really a walkthrough on how to do it, so I plan on fixing that. So if you're interested, stick around, possibly subscribe, but I feel gross asking that, so thanks for your time. I'll see you guys later, hopefully.